Okay. The Hangout on Air is live, and we are the Wisdom Factory, the Women Report, which we call Women. And today we have the title, How Can We Help to Clean the Present Mess in the World? And notice that we were live a little late. We have, as usual, tech. It's not because we are women. It's because sometimes tech does a little bit strange things. Anyway, today we are here in the crew. There is Gertraud, and there is Monja, and there is Tammy. Luna is missing today, but instead we have Elke from Germany. So we just start and we will see what comes out. We are meeting about once a month, and we are enjoying very much the discussion because it's sort of a dialogue, or in this case, quintalogue or something like this. So I think in the world is really messy, and the longer I listen into it, those films, documentaries, or listen to, let's say, public things which are not so official, the more I get to know that the world is really more messy than we thought. So the question is, what can we personally do? What can we do as women? We do as a group, as a collective. I throw that into, and who wants to start? Who has an idea what we can do?
So I didn't hear you mention Monia, but maybe I just missed that in the gap. But I just really...
Thank you.
Did I miss you? Oh, I'm so sorry. I was
all
sure.
right.
And yourself.
Oh, myself. Oh, gosh. No, you know who we are.
All right. Tammy?
So I would also note that one of my friends and colleagues, Anna Harris, is likely going to be joining us in the next few minutes as well, to increase our complement of women that are really looking directly into what we're looking into. And I guess I would start by saying that one of the things that I think is happening for us right now as humanity is that we are seeing more. And part of it is because we have the ability to see things all over the world with technology, and we have a lot that we need to look at and talk about. So we've got all of these increased capabilities within technology, as well as the human technology of really talking and looking at things together, and that we need to build the capacities to be able to do that. And as women, what I feel is different, or let's actually call it the feminine principle, because of course, you know, I personally have a lot of the male principle within the way that I operate, as well as the female principle, is for me a way to be able to see the wholeness of what it is that we are embedded in. Whereas for me, the male principle is about making things specific and cutting out the wholeness of things, and directing and pointing our attention in specific ways to be able to reduce and understand. Whereas with the feminine principle, it's more include and intuit. So I have a sense that the work that we're doing in looking at the world together is an important way for us all to build our capacities to do that, and to widen the pipe of how much we're actually able to hold and understand. So yeah, I would just sort of start there to give a little bit of context to our conversation today, and welcome whomever's next.
So, okay. If I understand you correctly, you want to, we all here want to train our muscles of consciousness, of awareness, of perseverance, and the tools we use, I guess they vary from in each individual. Today I went into the Samadhi tank, floating, and just trying to get in touch with what there was. And when I got out, I looked around and I saw that some things were not dusty, they were old, they were... So whenever I come out from the tank, I feel like redecorating the room. Which is not my business. But, and when I get out into the street, I notice that there are a lot more ambulances and police cars driving by, which is getting worse and worse in Vienna. And I wish I could know what they do, where they drive, why all these different settings are evolving, and just to trying to be flexible and adaptable. I don't know whether this is enough. In my age group, it's already a lot, but I wish I had more ways of communicating what I feel. Yeah.
So I take over. I think this is also a place to do that, and you are already doing it, no? So I think the reason also from my perspective, why we come together is exactly to talk about the things which we are maybe preoccupying, or which are, but what we are noticing. And what I notice for myself is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, or wider and wider and wider, of what. But I can say it's on two levels, or several levels. The one is what I read in the newspapers. The other is what I hear from other sources. The other thing is what I feel when I see certain things, the observation. When, you know, that you have sometimes when things are a little strange or not as you, and then life. So I figured out 4 levels now, and getting these together not easy. And I think it's very helpful to talk about it. I have Mark to talk with him, and this is good. But in a group like this, I'm grateful that we are here, and let's see where we go.
For me, there is sorry, listening to TV or radio or seeing the newspapers, and there is something that's like going with what's not working, going with what's wrong in the world. And for me, I think it's a challenge to not be dragged into that, to into this swampy, fearful, whatever. And at the same time, not just pretending there is no problem. I mean, to be aware, but not changing my being by recognizing what's not working. So I think it's kind of supporting our resilience in the face of what's not working and staying able to act in our wherever we are and what our passion is and what our mission is, not being overwhelmed by, oh, everything is just awful and it's getting more and more awful, and creating that by giving into the fearful way of being. So I think this is a really, really important to stay aware, to stay in contact with my inner being and with what I'm here for. And at the same time, not pretending, oh, it's, you know, like pink sauce over everything. So, yeah. And I think that's challenging. That's not so easy to stay present in this realm. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Anna. Welcome here in the women's group. So while you are getting yourself ready, I mute you and we hear a little bit Elke. Helge, you must unmute you on top of the screen. Okay.
Can I just listen in for the moment? Is that okay?
Okay, if you just want to listen, it's okay. So when Anna is ready, do you know what the title is today? The mess, women cleaning up the mess in the world. So on top of the screen, microphone icon, and you can unmute yourself. I think I heard you.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think I'm muted.
Okay,
but
good.
I wouldn't know where to begin, so I would like to listen to begin with. And
I would like to talk to what Gertraud said. I'm on this journey, I think I told you several times, since about August last year when we had the big earthquakes, and where I found out how little reliable official news are. There I went to many things, and ever new things came up. And I can only tell you, the more I know about how reality, I mean, in which we are living in, not the other reality, is handled at the moment, the more I'm getting sort of calm. Because it seems to be that the intuition was before that there is something wrong. Begin to see what it is that is wrong. It's not that you can do anything immediately. Like, you know, that finally security about what you have felt somewhere falls away. And really, I mean, what I heard only in the last 2 weeks, it's really worse than any Hollywood pictures. But that it is empowering me to know that, and not anymore. As you said, I don't feel completely overwhelmed. Sometimes, yeah, but generally, I feel that it's better to know it and to know what can come towards us. Today, for instance, it was another thing we listened to, and Mark said, now I can understand why in Nazi Germany people said they didn't know, aware of what is going on. what he is discovering about his country, you know. So yeah, I see it as an exercise in resilience and in preparation to comes up. Be more creative in imagining what you might prepare yourself for. So
just in terms of, just in reflecting a little bit about what we've talked about so far, as well as to sort of bring Anna a bit more up to speed, it's, for me, a part of this is, what are we looking at? Okay, so what you're saying, Heidi, is that over the last year, and especially the last couple of weeks, you have been aware of a lot more things specifically to do with the earthquakes in Italy, but also other things. Okay.
Yeah, the earthquakes were the beginning of the rabbit hole to, you know, to dig deeper and then understand what's going on really behind the scenes. Okay.
I'm gonna relate a story that my friend Toby Peter shared. He's a motorbike. He races motorcycles, and he used to say, "Look where you want to go," which is very apropos when you're on a motorcycle, because if you're taking that hairpin and you're looking at the tree, chances are way more likely that you're going to hit the tree than stay on the road. And I think that in what's going on with us right now, I mean broadly, humanity, I feel like we're looking at the tree. We're looking at the problems. And I'm not saying we don't need to look at the problems. However, there needs to be a balance between looking at the challenges we have and better understanding it, and having it as an all-consuming force that is directing our attention to what is wrong rather than what it is that we can do. Because I think that a part of it is how we tell the story. And what is going on for me in the international media landscape is that we are telling terrible stories, and that is affecting every one of us. And so, you know, in a way, media and how it works and doesn't is the one ring that rules us all, because it is what it is that comes into our consciousness, how we understand the world. And I think that part of the reason why I'm so passionate about these kind of sessions where we're getting together and being exactly who we are is because we need to have that humanity arise from within us and be seen and shown and understand who we are in relationship to each other, and begin to look in the same direction together, so that we can sort of turn that tide on what it is to look at how terrible everything seems to be playing out. We need to have a, you know, an active, demonstrated narrative of how to meet these challenges in a whole way, and in a way where we understand that none of us knows in themselves on their own, but together we can see wider and farther. And I would, you know, I think it's important to be conscious of where we're looking and choose what we want to both look at and talk about.
Tammy, as you know, fully agree with you. The media in Austria, we notice that people now don't believe anything anymore. Nothing. They don't believe anything that is said in our state media, on television, in the papers, because each paper belongs to a certain party and their perspectives and their filters are just this. But people, my husband is blogging a lot, and people sort of they converge already, and they look from different angles and different perspectives. And this makes me really positive, because we haven't had that before. We haven't had that. People believed, the leftists believed their papers, the writers believe their papers, and now all of a sudden they doubt everything. And this is new. This is absolutely new. It hasn't happened before, and this is what makes me hopeful. When we go on from here, when we sort of wrangle back or wrestle back the powers of the medias over our minds, then yeah, and we can do this by communicating directly from what we are, from our source. So it's not that bad. I'm positive.
I'm positive too, and I think it's exactly that we have now with the internet and with all the possibilities, we have the way to connect and not need to believe anymore the official stories. And that's what I'm talking about, more or less. We have ability to find out what is true and act in some way, which we hope will in that world which we see, and which is probably not the one which the official tell us. So
I think that the truth is more to do with the alternative which is being offered, rather than trying to find out what is the real truth behind the stories that are put out in the media. Because there, I think there's just huge confusion. But what we do have through the internet is this constant arrival of new groups getting together and innovating and offering alternatives, which are really producing a whole different arena, so that we don't have to confine ourselves to what is happening in the mainstream. We can actually feel that, particularly locally, we have the possibility of making links and thinking globally also through the internet, and not being, this sort of what's the word when the horses have these things on that they can't look from side to side, this narrow vision which is presented by the media. We know that that is probably, well, it's definitely one-sided, but I think if we put a lot of energy into trying to find out what the truth of that is, we will also be wasting our energy, because they are creating a lot of stories to create fear. That's really what the media are about. Yeah, let's have our own stories, and let's create something completely alternative. That would be how I would see it.
I'm wondering, why is it that the media need fear? Why is it? Because I remember the time we were in the States, and there was a hurricane warning every week or every other week, and it never came. It always sort of dissolved, but everybody went out and shopped. And so is it just about the consumer business, to keep people on their toes, to keep people nervous? Why is it? What is your opinion about that?
I think it's a way of controlling people, because I think everybody is aware that we are sitting on top of a volcano. The system is not working the way that it is. And it's being disrupted, and it's erupting in lots of different places. And there is a lot of fear, I think, among the sort of people who are in powerful government positions. How are they going to hold on to this system, which is being challenged in lots of different ways? And one way to do it is to create fear and to keep people obedient and, keeping this system going through, fear.
I'm listening to you. I think there is a pitfall in this, to go with, don't need to name the person or the system, to say fake news, fake news, fake news, whatever comes out of those. For example, now I see in the US, I see media going back to their original task, to be the fourth force. And so I think going this way and blaming all the media for everything and saying it's all fake, or we don't believe anything, is also sometimes exactly giving into what people that say, okay, if there's something that doesn't favor them in the government, then it's fake. So I think we need to be careful not to tap into that, and also saying all media is fake, everything is bad, and we need to be direct. There's some people, and they just feed into that bubble of fear, and create their own fake narrative. So what you said, Anna, before, this like creating positive narratives, creating where I want to go. So it's not so important who said what when, but to create that new narrative to support where I want to go, not where I don't want to go.
What I want to add here is also what Monica said, that nobody believes anything anymore. This is a big danger, because that can go into nihilism, and that people have no thing to grab. We humans, we need security to a certain extent, and when all security falls apart, for me it's a danger that then they go and take the easy way to ideologies, and be a good idea. So yeah, we need a positive way. We need to line out where instead you can go, and not just.
Yeah, and I think authoritism, or what do you call it? Despots, or whoever.
Authoritarianism.
Authoritarianism. Okay, thank you. They first go after the media. They first say it's all fake. So I think it's more supporting an independence, and not a and for example, in Germany there is a new online medium that brings positive news, and so to support those who start to create those stories, and not put them all, throw out the baby with the bathwater.
I was listening today to a talk by Helena Norbert Hodge, and she gave an opinion about the sort of extreme fascist type opinions, the very extreme right, fundamentalist opinions, the ideologies which seem to be growing. And what she said was that she felt that it was particularly where men have not, where their livelihoods have been challenged, where they can no longer find jobs to support their families because the small traders, the small businesses are really being pushed out by the large corporations. So there's very little room for people to find their dignity in their work as there has been in the past. And then what happens is this feeling of worthlessness gets expressed in these sort of white supremacist type ideologies. And so all of this is very much tied up with the economic system that we have. And she was particularly talking about having, I think she called it a whole, an economic whole, I can't remember the phrase she used, but it was the sort of economic system which would actually support people in keeping their dignity and being able to feel good about themselves. I think that has really been a large part of these sort of ideologies taking root.
Yeah, I guess I'm curious. There's this sense that I have around just the way that we focus our attention on things. You know, in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as you're saying, Anna, if people are, you know, their ability to feed their family is at risk, you're going to have a different response from people. So yes, I definitely see and agree. And maybe you can post the link to that talk as well, so that we can include that for our viewers to carry on the research. And that is part of what's going on, right? You know, we are all concerned about our own survival, and at the same time there's this greater need of our collective survival as everything sort of starts to unpin and fall apart in terms of systems and how we interact with the different systems in the world, whether that be our government or in wherever we may be in the world, or what we choose to spend our money on, how we get our livelihood. Like, all of these things are, it's kind of into 52 card pickup mode. We don't know. We actually don't know as we move into automation, for example. You know, we talk about universal basic income, but I think that there's a paradigm shift that's required for us to biologize and understand and be able to talk about that around, you know, how money actually works. This, and yet that's what is informing the governance and decision making that's happening at all levels and scales around the planet. The bottom line is the bottom line, and yet we don't actually see it that way. When we talk about politics, what I see we're really talking about is economic decision making and the power to do so. So in terms of how we focus our attention together to be able to transition from where we are to a better series of systems, bring ourselves and our lives into that. I think that the work that we do here in Women Matters, the work that some of us have been doing in the Global Challenges collaboration, and many, many, many hundreds of groups that are forming right now all over the world are the practices and protocols and ways of knowing and being to be able to really bring ourselves to creating new systems. And part of that, and where I see we are right now, is in observing what is right now. And I think that this work that we do is incredibly valuable, both personally as well as collectively. And so I'm just really grateful to be here and be a part of this right now.
Yeah, I think that a very important part of this is being able to express our whole selves in these sort of gatherings, where we're not just putting a brave smile on and pretending that things are fine. Being able to express the fears and the possibility that things actually can go a lot worse than they are at the moment, and what that makes us feel as women, as mothers, as grandmothers. It's really important to be able to express that out in the open, because there aren't many places where it's possible to talk about that in an open way.
Yesterday I heard a speech of Reese Witherspoon, and she said that after 25 years in the Hollywood business, she realized that all movies are created by male writers, produced by male producers. She took one sentence out of the whole thing, and she said, when something happens, mostly the woman has to say to the man, what are we going to do? As if she was not able to do it herself. And she said, so like kind of laughing, but said, but we as women know when something happens, we have to get there, and we are active to take care of our kids or whatever that is. And that she started a new producing firm, women only, and only script writers women. And she said, this is a completely new narrative, and everybody told her she can't do it. And she succeeded very well with awards and everything. I cannot say what movies they were, but she's very successful in that. It's more that we left two men to create the narrative. And so this, like in those movies, those women that were scripted by men are the heroes, or our women examples. And so I think when we come in and create that new narrative, it will change. Like the Me Too, for example. It's like now women start to speak up. Now it's coming more and more obvious that this power game cannot go on like this anymore.
Say to what you said, we women can step up and do, and actually it's the old role of women. We are cleaning up the mess. Just to connect to our topic today, we normally, took what is to do and not think about what we could do maybe when we do it perfectly, but just do it. And this is a typical quality we have, and I see it everywhere. Grateful for that.
Again, there is a very clear example, like after World War II, when the men were out prisoner of wars, or so. It was the women who rebuilt, who cleaned up the mess, literally, and did men's work till the man came home, and then they had to go a step back into their normal role.
This is a huge cultural shift which needs to happen. I have many women friends who talk about being lonely, feeling that if they had a mate, somehow they wouldn't feel so lonely. There is this whole culture which we're fed as part of the Hollywood product, and also through all the media, really, that being in a couple is the right place to be. It's the proper way to be. And I think it's quite difficult for women to really be brave enough to feel that alone they can stand up to being a positive force in the world. Because everywhere you look, it's the men that are doing, that it's the men that are in charge. And there is a reality which I think we all have to somehow connect with inside ourselves, of our dependency, our vulnerability, our need for love, our need for relationship, our need for connection, which is still somehow focused in that male-female relationship. Yeah, I just think there's such a lot of work to do on this level of being able to be women who stand up for ourselves as women alone, because a lot of us live alone. A lot of the older women, I guess I'm talking about. I mean, younger women now seem to, it's more likely to be part of a cooperative household. I think also what comes in here is the whole categorization of gender, which we have grown up with, which is being challenged now, certainly in the UK, in England, in the schools. Young children are being offered the possibility of choosing their gender from a very early age. In other words, they don't have to stick with the gender that they were assigned when they were born. So I find this amazing revolution happening through the children who are responding to this possibility, this opportunity of being able to challenge the whole gender categorization which we've grown up with.
What's so important about being a certain gender, which isn't just going back to that the male is more important? I'm talking from a history and a conditioning of more than 55 years being a couple with my husband, and of course we changed, both of us, but we are still together and we enjoy each other even more now that we are old, because it's not that long we'll have to go on. But I know that we women have in our system the patriarchal conditioning. And this is a very, very narrow road when you try not to fall into these traps anymore. How do you do it? How do I do it? I can only talk about myself. I'm staying very much alert, and also linguistics. I try to, and our generation still uses a lot of the war vocabulary, and you can see it in our media printed, and it's about fighting, and it's about the frontier, and it's about, so it's not about holistic, looking at things holistically, which we as having been informed by Ken Wilber of possibilities, and of course he's male and he has his faults and he has his problems, but he also has his intellect, and once we women use our intellect, we become dangerous. This is what there is also a book about women who read are dangerous. So I guess each one of us reads a lot, and not just reads, but contemplates. And this gives us resilience. It gives me, I can only talk about myself again, it gives me resilience, and it gives me sometimes for the desperation of my husband, but I'm standing up now for what women see and what they perceive and what they intend to. And luckily he likes to come along and to consider what I'm talking about. And not just because I'm integral, but, well, because he knows me very well and he knows that I'm authentic.
Yesterday in the Wisdom Factory, we had a conversation between Barbara von Maybaum and John Freeman, Men and Women in Power, and it's very interesting. I recommend to you to listen to it. It was I can say a fun talk, but it was not funny, but it was really profound, and many came up, and we can talk about that. Another question I have to Anna. This gender thing in schools, is it only the roles, or is it also gender change? Let's say, I heard that children, even parents agree that children can change, make a surgery to change their sex, and that seems to me really, because we all, at a certain moment, I wanted to be a male in my youth, you know, and I was not. And there are boys who want to be a female, and later on you discover that. So I think that would be a danger if in too early it would be allowed.
I agree with you. Yes, I think there's a lot of confusion still about, as there always is with a totally new introduction into the culture, you know, it goes to extremes. I think people and children are really objecting to the categories that they are put into in terms of male and female, much more than the physical. There are people like Grayson Perry, who dresses as a woman but is quite happy to be a man. And I think he's a very good role model. But there are many who feel somehow, well, it's still very difficult for people to accept that they can just be themselves. As I think, sorry, I don't know the name of the woman who was talking about herself being a couple. That seems to be the most important. But we don't need to identify as male or female. That it's much more important just to be able to feel that we can authentically be ourselves.
I'm really excited about this conversation, and thank you for bringing it up, Anna. And yes, the gender revolution is happening. And I think that kids nowadays, they are a lot more in touch with their authentic selves. And, you know, part of what we might see as entitlement, part of the sense of that people I have heard talked about kids nowadays feeling, I think there's a positive side of that, of people feeling that they are allowed to be who they are. And I think that that's really important. And I think that the kids today are showing us how to be by their beingness. In terms of my experience with people who have chosen to change their gender from what is assigned at birth, my sister is married to a transgendered man, and he is completely inspiring to me. We went to high school together, and I see what he went through identifying as male and presenting as female. And this is in the 80s. And if you look at Mick today, there's no way that you would know that he off this life assigned as a female. And part of that is because he had he was so strongly knowing his identity as a teenager that he was able to begin the transition when it was really meaningful in terms of being able to incorporate the biological changes that he's undergone to be able to come into alignment with his gender identity. So there's one example that I mean, so I guess that is over 30 years of a person that I've known who has taken a hero's journey to be able to stand in his truth. And I also live with Christopher, who is changing his gender from female to male right now. And so I have quite a bit of experience with people that are choosing their identities, which while ever I understand that it's important to be able to have support and to be able to make good decisions together as families and as people, that we're progressing. And I think that's a great thing. And I'm just really inspired with the people that I know that have chosen that journey. And I can also see how painful and difficult and challenging it is to continuously come up to this barrier that's very unseen of how people in terms of your gender. So it's a really rich topic, and I think that the kids are showing us the way. So thanks for bringing it up, Anna.
Yeah, I think it's to do with individual choice and how much that challenges the culture of society. You know, how much can society really allow people individual choice? And that includes, I guess, surgery if that's what they want. And yeah, we just need to be able to be flexible about that.
I think we have talked about an hour now, and we're coming to an end. What I hear when I'm hearing all this, and we were talking about cleaning up the mess, I fear sometimes that we are adding to the mess, because how do we really know what we want? really in profundity what they want. And you have a certain age, you recognize that often you thought that was what you want, and later you figure out, oh, maybe you didn't want. Who is so adult up to be really sure that it is? And I really do doubt that children are able to do that. I'm sorry, Tammy. What I see here in my neighborhood, there are normal children, and they want a little bit this, and then they want this, and then they want this. They are completely different than everybody else. They might still be conditioned by society, but maybe by other ideas, by green ideas of how they should be now. Today, they should go for demonstrations or whatever, but pay attention and not see things which we like to see in children as their own expression. They are doing their developmental pathways as everybody does, and they need a certain, to be able to do that. Because if they have a whole lot of choice, there are enough psychological studies. If they have to decide, they have not the framework to get security in their lives, and they have a whole lot of problems later. So I think we should respect what we know are the levels of development for children and not overload them with believing they can decide for themselves at a certain age. That will come, but later. So that is my personal opinion. I all of you to do a last word, and then we can do another topic exactly about that if you like to. Moment, I would say we are coming to an end.
My camera gave out, but I still can hear you, and I hope you can hear me. Good. I was the one about the couple, the old couple. I am the old couple.
You're a little bit faint. Can you come closer to the microphone?
Yeah, is this better?
Yeah.
And I
Yes.
do agree with Heidi and spiral dynamics. And I have a grandchild age of 14 and 22 and 21. And they can decide about their gender, but they wouldn't dream of doing it because all of them like their gender. The girls like being a girl, and we now have advertising again by women who promote the girl in them, which I think is ridiculous, because when you are promoting your girl, you don't have any power. So I'd rather have them promote the woman in them. But that's just advertising for you. Yeah. I have always, almost all my life, I've been a hetero, and I still enjoy it for many reasons. I'm now almost 76, and yeah, it's still fun being a woman. And I understand why people hesitate or don't know, but usually it's not just their gender, it's most of their life they are not sure about. And to support them is maybe a very important fact, to support them and give them esteem. And yeah, but I wouldn't dream of wanting to help them, because they can help themselves now in our times. Thank you. So now I just...
Yeah, and I would like to add something that I think it's most important to create a safe space in which children can grow, develop, and playing with their choices or developing more and more the capability of choosing without being overloaded with too early to have to choose very outreaching things. So for me, it's more that each and every child can be fully themselves, and develop into the human being they are meant to be, and that the gender or how much part of female or male or whatever that might be, or how artistic or how sporty or how whatever that is, that it's not important. The importance is that they can express themselves who they really are more and more and more. And I think if we don't put children into a box where they need to be a certain way, we create shadows. We suppress certain parts of them, and that will lead into trouble. And the more they are fully expressed who they really are, they will do, we said they will create the right narrative. They will create what they are up to. They will be strong enough with self-love, self-esteem, and the feeling loved and supported for their journey. And so I think a very important part of us, not only the mothers, but we as a whole, to support the next generation to live up to that and not be crippled within certain frames. Yeah. So that's what I think, and clean up the mess that that we created with in getting to the age we are. Yeah.
Go, Anna.
I just really love what you were saying, Gertrude, and how important it is just to support children to be themselves. And I appreciate having been part of this conversation, and thank you very much for inviting me. And I hope you have many more like this. Okay.
So I just think this is so rich. You know, how do we clean up the mess in the world? And then that this points us into the direction of how we understand gender, that this is where we that this is where we ended up. And I think that part of what we do as people embodying the feminine principle is we try to understand more and hold more. And I'm excited about where this is going to take us. And in terms of gender, I'll just share from myself that, you know, I feel very male a lot of the time. I'm not, you know, I'm not interested in changing my gender, but in terms of how I feel inside, because I am very, you know, I have both, but I feel strongly male often. And so it's a richer conversation in terms of the spectrum of gender identity that we all hold. And I really welcome that in terms of our Women Matters segments, as well as in the context of the Me Too campaign, which is, you know, we are all here, and while ever what might be thought is happening is a binary conversation, it's actually a multiplicity that we are exploring, and it can't fit into a binary, just as gender can't today. So I really appreciate these deeper conversations, and I'm really grateful to each one of you for showing up so beautifully and fully, and Heidi for hosting us and helping to and leading us in where we're going. So thank you, everyone.
Can I
Thank
just
you,
have a
everybody.
last word
Yeah.
about the mess? It's just occurred to me, and I'm sorry I didn't sort of say it before. Very messy, and that we don't actually, at the moment, how the mess is just an inevitable part of the birth of something extraordinary, which is about to come. So, you know, like a living baby comes out of nowhere through all this mess, and delights us all. It's possible that somehow this is what's happening. We don't know.
Yeah, and this is one of the feminine principles, being comfortable with not knowing. And so
Yeah.
I thank you very, very much for being here, and we see you next month.
Thank you.